This is the Regent Ösel Tendzin at a seminar entitled Meditation in the Three Yanas held at Naropa Institute in Boulder, Colorado. This is Talk 8, July 9th, 1979. This is an ARP digital remaster made November 2007.
We are continuing our discussion of the practice of the Mahayana, the great vehicle. The notion of Mahayana is that we can afford to relax our own salvation. And we can actually afford not to hang on to our own sanity as some kind of security. No matter how subtle our practice might be, how in tune we feel, and how precise and mindful, if we are still hanging on to that mindfulness as our own possession, then we can never understand the Mahayana or practice the Mahayana. The whole notion of greater vision, great vehicle, great way, larger path is based simply on this. By giving up, or I should say extending, better than giving up, extending the sanity that we have experienced through meditation practice, we can actually become part of that larger vision or greater vision. So in some ways it's very simple. It goes along with what we've been doing from the beginning. In terms of our meditation practice, shamatha vipassana practice, it's not holding on, not trying to secure our experience of sanity, of goodness as well. I think this is a very common, universal experience. That when we sit and practice meditation and we actually feel grounded, sane, and at that time, we're not wondering about where did this sanity come from or where is it going. But in that very moment, we feel actually sane, grounded. And then, we experience some flicker in our mind, some kind of a panic, some kind of reference point to that sanity, saying, "Whoops, that was good. How can I? Can I?" And then generally we try to grind out some more out breaths so that we can get back to how good we felt when we weren't thinking about who we are. Well, that very notion is very much the same as the practice of sending and taking. Beginning with ourselves, that we don't have to hang on to our personal feeling good, feeling sane, but we can actually let that out, let it extend. But even more so, when we feel that we've lost that sense of sanity because of discursive thought or whatever occurs in our practice, that we actually don't have to hang on to that as well. Not hanging on to that doesn't mean getting rid of it, but it means acknowledging the experience of discursive thought or whatever might occur in one's mind, and then again, letting go, going out. When we apply that to ourselves, or who we think we are, then we are experiencing some sense of maitri, friendship to ourselves, or loving ourselves, having some sense of affection to ourselves, that we don't have to take our discursiveness all that seriously. We can actually be at home with what occurs in our mind, also what occurs in our experience as we lead our lives. If we actually practice that way, we can feel the texture of egolessness, that this is not such a big deal, so solid. And because of that, we begin to look around and see that people are taking themselves so seriously, taking their ego so seriously that they create pain for themselves. Because of that, we develop a soft spot for all sentient beings, everybody. And we begin to feel compassion, development of compassion in ourselves. And that compassion is the same as what we call absolute bodhicitta, which was talked about last time by the Vajracharya. Enlightened genes. Is that right? Yeah. From your own practice, you can see sentient beings actually making a mess of the whole thing. At the same time, you can see it's not necessary. That they also, the same as you, possess that sense of Buddha nature, that existence of Buddha nature. And the difference is discipline and practice. You have practiced meditation. You've had some contact with your own Buddha nature, some sense of Buddha nature being there. And therefore, compassion can arise. In fact, that's the only way it does arise. It's not based on good works and all the sort of charitable things that people like to do. But it's based on actually experiencing it oneself. That you realize that confusion and pain, the way we inflict it upon ourselves, through believing in the ego and self, is unnecessary. That, believe it or not, we have actually experienced how to be without ego. It's true. We did that, or we are doing that. And it's a very simple matter. So there might be some kind of frustration at the same time. That frustration is a compassion. How to extend that sanity further? Well, the practice of sending and taking, which is a very simple one, as was discussed last week. Drawing in whatever negativity there is that you might feel in the atmosphere or in the person you're relating to, or even generally, the whole world, and sending out the sanity that you actually have experienced. Ordinarily speaking, we think, well, there must be some limit to the sanity that we experience. If we take in all that nasty stuff, maybe we only have so much sanity that we've stored up. And if we give it all out, all we're left with is nasty stuff. But on the other hand, who's saying that? Egolessness. Is not a concept, not a thought process. It's not an experience. So, sending and taking doesn't rely on how good you feel. We can't say, how egoless do you feel today? Do you feel egoless enough to do 10 minutes of Tonglen, sending and taking? How could that be? The whole notion of the Mahayana comes out of our experience of a vipassana. That oneself and one's environment has no particular purpose, just is. Ourselves and our environment don't have any purpose, no project as such. Last week the Vajracharya was talking about ego and saying, well, where is this ego? Let's try and find it. How big is it? Is it thick or thin, tall, short? How long has it been here? Nobody comes up with anything. Egolessness. The realization of egolessness is also the development of compassion at the same time. Because compassion cannot be based on some sort of project or some sort of credential. It comes directly out of our practice. And if we say, well, who is it that experienced this egolessness? Nobody knows. Nobody can say, well, it must have been you. You'll say, well, what do you mean me? It's not your history as so-and-so. It's not your identity as a practitioner or as a Buddhist or Naropa Institute student. It simply is the direct experience of being here when you sit, when you are, without any kind of hesitation or preconception. So experiencing that gives rise to the bodhicitta, which was talked about, a relative bodhicitta, and that is the inspiration to actually work for the benefit of others. Because you see that everybody is making the same mistake you did. Basically having very little humor about me. So that kind of realization is very inspiring, that you actually feel you can do something about it. So, practitioners take the Bodhisattva vow. And Bodhisattva vow is twofold. It's an intention and application. Intention, again, arises out of our experience of egolessness. that compassion dawns on us, that we have some intention of not holding on to our sanity but expressing it and extending it to others, so that others might experience some sanity in their life. That's intention. And further than that, there's application, which is called the practice of the paramitas. The Paramitayana is another name for the Mahayana. Paramita means other shore, or having gone to the other shore, having crossed over. What that means is action without ego. Action. Having had the inspiration to make a journey, we have to purchase a ticket and actually make that journey. So taking the Bodhisattva vow is like committing oneself to take that journey, to not hold on to any kind of personal liberation or personal sanity, but to give up, give away that to others. And that giving away involves taking a lot of shit as well. Well, we could have that pretty notion of that we could give away everything and everybody's going to be happy, which is what happened with the Christian missionaries in China and Japan, in the East especially. That they brought the good news, but nobody wanted to hear it. And eventually kicked them out of Japan in any case. The Jesuits and whatnot. That's kind of like trying to make somebody's pain go away by hitting them with a brick. They say, well, now I feel better. The action involved in extending one's sanity needs skill, so that it doesn't degenerate into some sort of ego fantasy of I'm helping the world, I'm doing great things for everybody, and eventually I'll be bronzed and immortalized by everybody. This kind of action we're talking about is practical. It evolves out of the practice of sending and taking when you sit. That sending and taking has to occur as well in your everyday life. What's called meditation in action. And the Bodhisattva's view is that whatever action occurs is the action of transcending ego. Whether it involves the notion of self or the notion of other, or the notion of both. Whatever action occurs in our life is the practice of transcending ego. It may seem rather mundane to think that going to a restaurant for dinner is the action of transcending ego, but it is, and could be if we practice properly. working with your partner, your wife, your friends, your relatives, your world in general, every action could be transcending ego. If we practice the sending and taking properly, then we can feel that it's not necessary to hold on to this, even if this is sane. That's a very subtle point and a very simple point at the same time. What makes everybody squirm is when we feel okay and some kind of assault, some kind of attack occurs from the outside, so-called outside. Some kind of neurosis, not ours. Oh no. Some kind of neurosis from the outside comes at us. What to do about that? How to practice properly in that situation? Well, take it in completely and give out everything that's sane and good. Not that you possess, but everything that is sane and good. Doing that involves certain kinds of action which have particular names. The first one is called generosity. The paramita of generosity is simply this: not being poverty-stricken about oneself, which actually is fantastic, which actually is a great breakthrough in our ego world, is we don't have to feel poverty-stricken about who we are and what we are, including our negative blah, blah, blah. That we actually do possess such richness of sanity, of basic goodness, Buddha nature, actually do possess that we can be generous to others. That we don't have to maintain a poverty mentality constantly. Again, the whole thing we're talking about is based on egolessness, experience of egolessness. How can you be not poverty-stricken? It's because poverty is based on the notion of I, me. How well I do, and if I'm a success or a failure, and all the rest of it. How can there be any richness in that sense? The only richness you would have in that sense is massing up your fortune next to you and sort of giving out little pennies like the foundations, so-called foundations, of which there are many, who like to do things for worthy causes, among others Naropa Institute. We hope they do more of that. But actually not too much, because it takes more money to support their gift than it does to spend it or receive it. That's the whole idea, the absence of poverty. Say, well, I'll give you this money if you produce this report, and if you show me the specimens that the money we gave actually worked out the way we wanted it to. That is not generosity. Maybe there is some inkling of generosity there, but it is so heavily loaded with concept, a result. We have to have a result. Well, from your practice of sending and taking, generosity occurs without result. without necessity for you to feel how good you are by being generous. That's the absence of poverty. And the second paramita is called discipline. Is because you're willing to let go of the statistics, the grades of how well you did. Because of that, you are free from excitement about what you did. And that's very important. Because you might be extremely generous, but then you might get excited about being so generous. And then a little old friend of ours creeps in, called the ego, saying, how generous. I would like to be more generous. When can I do that again? When can I try that on somebody else? That's not so funny. It happens. You have a great success at being generous, and then you think, I got to try that again. And next person you meet, you say the same thing. And it's a disaster. Still, we're talking about egolessness. That discipline is free from excitement, passion about your generosity, your commitment to being open, generous. So discipline, if there's an afterthought of how generous you were, you can actually dispel that with discipline of coming back to egolessness, checking back every time you feel good about doing something good. You can take the air out of the hot air balloon with discipline. Because of that, your generosity doesn't cause any harm, which is very important. That you recognize that generosity can cause harm if it's ego-based. In the least, it won't go very far. Your generosity won't go very far if there's ego. In the worst, it causes harm. So with discipline, in this case, coming back to sending and taking, the whole approach of sending and taking, being generous, expressing the richness of sanity and letting go of that as well, disowning, gives rise to patience. Third one. Which is a very interesting one, and that is that having been disciplined, bringing oneself back to the whole notion of doing things without any credit or notion of result for oneself, then possibility occurs that the generosity and discipline that's extended might be thrown back in your face. Very simply just thrown in your face. And the person you're trying to be good with, or the people, or the world, will say, mind your own business and leave me alone. Or worse than that, they might try to compliment you and say, how wonderful that you helped me. That's when you have to develop patience as well. What is this patience altogether? Patience is called the armor of a bodhisattva. It's sort of the middle point of practicing these paramitas, that patience becomes the cornerstone in that. In order to actually proceed further on the path of egolessness, it is necessary not to accept or reject the praise or the blame of others, which is very difficult in some sense if you hanker after fame, spiritual or material or physical or whatever, psychological fame, or notoriety of any kind. These are very good practices because they are telltale practices. It's like a sort of a hair, some sort of tickle all the time. Generosity, discipline, patience. The way a bodhisattva practices is constant in that sense. That each thing leads to the other or encompasses the other rather than leads to. So if you're generous and disciplined about that, you might be tickled by patience or impatience in this case. Having expressed your sanity, or the sanity, I should say, of the teachings to somebody else, and having stayed with it, been disciplined, still, we might be disappointed by the reaction of somebody else. Whether they liked it or they didn't like it. Whether they understood what you said or they didn't understand what you said. At that point, patience means, again, sending and taking. In this case, that all sentient beings, excluding none, possess Buddha nature. And with discipline, with generosity, and with patience, they can recognize their Buddha nature. So, basically, it comes down to not giving up. You don't give up at all because your disappointment about your action is egoless as well. Do you understand? Your disappointment is also egoless. So having done so, if we do so, we can practice exertion, which is the fourth paramita. Exertion meaning not holding on to any territory whatsoever, including whether or not somebody has understood you, or you have been understood, or the Dharma has been understood. There's a further energy which is actually energy which is sparky, light. How can we go on saying the same thing, teaching the same thing for 2,500 years? This is a very interesting proposition. Maybe for some of you, this is the first time you've heard the Dharma, this session of the Naropa Institute. Maybe for others, you might have heard it for, well, at least 10 years, maybe 9, 8, 7, 6. And you've heard the same thing. where do we get the energy to listen or to speak? You can say the whole thing is so boring. Oh, tonight he's going to talk about the paramitas. Okay. On the other hand, it seems that everybody's listening. That quality of being able to go further, listen to the Dharma, practice the Dharma, go further, is because there's not so much of accumulation. We haven't accumulated so much that we can go further. That would be ego's territory. From the point of view of storing up our experience so that we say, well, how do you get the energy to go on? Well, it's because I'm experienced. I've heard it so many times that I can just sit here and be, pretty much at home with the whole thing, That's not actually true. Usually people fall asleep. The point is how we can be awake is because at this level of exertion, the Dharma and the practice of the Bodhisattva path has started to become ingrained in our system. It's like the sun coming up in the morning. The flowers might be drooping overnight. When the sun comes up, they stand up straight. They're energized by the sun. It's the same thing here. When we hear the Dharma, again, we're energized. When we have the opportunity to relate with sentient beings, again, we're energized. And there's a certain kind of joy in that, certain kind of upliftedness in that, cheerfulness in that. Because through our practice we have realized altogether that energy and joyfulness to go further does not rely on anything at all. It's completely self-existing. It doesn't have anything behind it. And if that is the case, then we can practice meditation in the paramita sense, which means continual steadiness of being on the spot all the time. The continual steadiness of letting go all the time, opening all the time, and giving all the time without reservation. That's a paramita quality of meditation. Constant steadiness of practicing all of those, of generosity, discipline, patience and exertion, becomes steady and constant. Meditation quality, samadhi. Samadhi means, in this case, rock-like, constant. Again, all of this we're talking about is because there's no ego. And finally, that constancy of meditative action gives birth to discriminating awareness, or prajna. That prajna is the sword, which is the final development of skillful means, a relative bodhicitta, that can give birth to enlightenment in oneself and others. That is, one's heart, awakened heart, and mind are completely synchronized, so that whatever ego territory arises can be cut through on the spot. Now, that doesn't mean any kind of bull in a china shop approach. That's completely beside the point. The sword of prajna cuts two ways, self and other, and does not create pain. It is so clean and fine that it does not create pain. Cuts ego cleanly and spontaneously. We call it discriminating awareness, meaning that we can actually sort out on the spot which is ego and non-ego. And because of that, our total action, our total being is true. And we can realize our full potential as a human being. And that is simply this: without thought of self, dedicating our life to the benefit of others continually. Perhaps we could have a discussion at this point. There's a gentleman way back there.
Could you talk a little bit more about coming back to egolessness in terms of the way you're describing the first two paramitas?
Well, I think that involves a sense of humor. In terms of one's own congratulation, that you actually feel some sense of generosity, which is very genuine. That you can let go of this trip and give something to somebody. Then you start to congratulate yourself, which involves sense of humor. When you see that, you sort of chuckle. That you're congratulating yourself for being so generous. That's coming back to egolessness.
Thank you.
Do you know why?
Do I know why what?
Why would you chuckle? Why would that be humorous?
Why? I can't think of an answer to why.
Okay. Thank you. Gentleman here.
Are you responsible for the suffering that you see, that you feed with a compassion?
Everywhere, you mean? The whole suffering?
Yeah.
The whole thing? Yes and no. You're not responsible for how it happened, but you're responsible to see that it doesn't continue that way. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. Then the compassion
There's no guilt.
cleans it.
No guilt.
Right.
No history. But if you see it,
You create it, right?
yeah, yourself and others.
And the compassion frees it or cleanses it? Or?
Well, compassion is basically the sense that it's not necessary. That's basic compassion. Okay? But more than that, there's path quality. Since it's not necessary, how are we going to work with that? Not necessary. Unnecessary. How are we going to work with that? Feeling in ourselves that we see that the whole notion of suffering is self-induced.
By the perceiver or by what appears to be the world or the other?
Both, perceiver and other. In fact, specifically.
Then by feeling the compassion, does that create the suffering?
Well, you can't. I'm not talking about feeling the compassion. That the compassion just arises because you realize there's no other choice. I mean, what else could we do? We could, beautify America, try to close down the Rocky Flats plant.
We could heal the suffering in ourselves.
To begin with, yes, definitely. To heal it, yeah. Well, we could deflate it for sure. What does it say on your t-shirt?
Life scan.
Life?
Scan.
Scan. Huh.
You talked about living within projects, and I have a difficult time in differentiating, always in my experience, between that sense of living within a project and living with discipline. Could you distinguish those two?
Well, the project doesn't have any generosity to oneself.
Mm-hmm. And so how is it that discipline carries this generosity to oneself?
No, it's the other way around. Generosity carries the discipline.
Uh-huh. And projects are just pushed along?
Mm-mm.
No?
There's a good project and a bad project. A good project doesn't have to be pushed along. A bad project does. But we constantly have to prop it up. Inflate it all the time. Isn't that true?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good project occurs spontaneously from our experience, our realization. It's very good to help other people realize that it's not necessary to make such a pain.
Thank you.
Lady here in the green.
In the Mahayana practice, paramita practice, as far as I'm concerned, you develop it. It doesn't spring out full blown. And sometimes it works, sometimes it happens, and sometimes you get real heavy-handed and get burned out. And it gets a real tangled mess. I don't know. I seem to get more. I mean, the more I notice it happens, I'll fall out of it and I'll get more confused and more burned out, and I seem to do more havoc on my environment.
Shouldn't be.
I know it shouldn't be, but...
Well, where did it start? Can we backtrack? How'd that happen?
Just relating to the environment. The particular environment that I live in is very intense, and there's a lot of demand on me to be out there 24 hours a day.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Somebody demanded that of you?
Yeah.
Who did?
Pardon?
Who did?
Well, I did by getting myself in that situation.
Yeah, so...
Well, I'm in it now, and it'll go fine, then I'll have a great desire to retreat and hide.
Well, there's a problem, of trying to make a crusade out of one's life. And actually being genuinely open and patient and generous and all the rest of it. Now, these kind of paramita practice, they're not monuments. They don't occur in, monumental displays. Now I am being generous, now I'm being patient, that kind of thing. They blend together with each other. But basically, it comes right down to the whole notion of who we think we are and what we're doing. Situations become so complicated, especially if you're talking about a Mahayana notion of things, that helping others or working for the benefit of others becomes very complicated if there's ego involved, any kind of sense of result or purpose, reward of any kind. It's very complicated that way. Even the so-called demand of others is fishy. You say, somebody says, you might be working in a situation where there are a lot of people depending on you, and say, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. Right? I don't know, like that. And then you begin to feel depressed, downtrodden. I had this great ideal, so-called the Bodhisattva ideal, that I was going to accomplish this thing, and now I haven't, because everybody said I didn't do it. And they're criticizing me, they're down on me, I didn't do it. Well, you better watch out for the ego situation there. There's not enough gentleness to oneself and to others at that point. After all, we are practicing, working on this. It's not so much that we sort of wheeled in the set of this big castle of generosity and patience and the whole thing and say, well, here it is. We're practicing all the time.
I think that's where I get sort of confused. I have flashes of that where it just happens. It's not really effort here. It just happens, and then I'll suddenly recognize I did it, and it gets completely confused. I'm more confused now than I ever was. It just gets really tangled up.
Maybe that's great, actually. Maybe that's the best thing that ever happened. Maybe I should be completely confused. At the same time, disciplined. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Is stay with your confusion. Don't give it up. Don't give up. But the moment you feel, I'm confused, let go of it. And look around. Just have some relationship with the things around you, people around you. My project is not all that important after all.
Thank you.
Gentleman in the back.
Could you say something more about prajna as a sword? That idea seems like it conflicts with the idea of gentleness, the idea of the sword.
No, that's the whole notion of complete gentleness. You know, we try to be so helpful to people that we actually hit them over the head. See, that's the whole notion of prajna, is the culmination of the paramita practice is when you develop such a discriminating awareness that you can actually criticize or make some sense of effort to help somebody. You might say criticize in this case, but basically help somebody and criticize might go together. When we usually we criticize, it's like a sledgehammer and creates chaos. In this case, prajna means that criticism is at that point the same as affection. The two things have come together completely. So the sword is so clean, it cuts your notion of helping somebody and the person's problem at the same time. Clean stroke. That's the notion of sword.
I see. It's preciseness then, as opposed to.
It's a precision and warmth combined.
Thank you.
Over here? Yeah, in the back. Florida. Keep going back. Gentleman with the grayish beard.
Thank you. You mentioned that the desire for fame or praise or adulation was because of the ego. A little confused. Wouldn't somebody with a totally self-sufficient ego just not need any praise or applause from anybody outside himself?
Self-sufficient ego?
Yeah, I mean somebody who had a full ego, who didn't...
Somebody who had a full ego would have his picture behind him and his posters on the wall. Everything that he had or she had around him or her would remind them of themselves.
Yeah, but wouldn't they then not need the applause of other people or the desire for
No,
fame?
they wouldn't, because they'd have so many reminders of themselves. Their picture, their speeches, their trophies. Sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. If that makes any sense to anybody. Somebody with a fully developed ego wouldn't need anybody. Egomaniac's dream.
Since we're talking about, let's say, the form of this situation, you talking to all of us, I wonder, it's been a very beautiful talk, but I just wonder about the form of it, and does the form itself communicate the message? Because, we're all sitting here facing you, and I wonder in terms of compassion, and it seems easy to face you and maybe even to go off and meditate, but to face each other seems a lot more difficult, and really where the problem or the ego is introduced. Not so much in one person. When you're sitting by yourself, there's not that much ego there, but the ego happens when it's between people. It's not in one person or in another.
That's right.
And so in terms of working on that, it seems the only possibility for working on that is in relationship with other people.
Oh, wait. Slow down.
Okay.
Slow down. First, the notion of other people is, to begin with, our own fantasy.
I have a lot of trouble with that because I have a tendency to believe. It may be a belief, and it may be the universal mind kind of idea that, in a certain sense, feelings are between people. Like an emotion, even if it may not be exactly synchronized.
Sounds like a bad soup.
A bad soup?
Throw everything into a pot. It tastes terrible. Do you know what I mean? Say, well, emotions are between people.
Yeah.
Well, if you put all the emotions between all of us right now, we'd have a terrible soup.
It's a lot to work on.
Really terrible soup.
It sure is. It sure is a lot to work on. And in terms of what happens when everyone leaves and in their interactions, which this soup does, it does get tasted when people leave, when they start talking to each other. And it may not be, you may be able to put the lid on it now, but...
Good heavens. Is that what we're trying to do?
I'm not saying we're trying to do it. I'm just trying to look at what's happening without trying to look at motive, let's say, because motivation I always wonder when there's motivation.
Yes.
You know, all right, to continue on that thought, you know, where there's motivation, seems to me there's kind of a cover-up of
really?
sorts.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, come on. Is that true?
Just when I think of,
Is that true?
Yeah, because when people ask me, like, why did I go to Naropa this summer or whatever, to sit and meditate or whatever, and as soon as I start coming up with reasons, now I think I'm getting off the subject.
No, you're not.
I'm not?
You're right on the
Okay.
subject. Yeah.
When I start coming up with reasons, they seem to somehow...
Okay, why are you coming up with the reasons? Why did you come to Naropa Institute?
Why?
Can you answer me?
Okay, that's...
No, listen. Let's stop for a minute. Let's stop for a minute. I'm not anybody in particular who's asking you.
No, I understand.
It just sort of happened.
Right,
okay?
Exactly.
Why did you come to Naropa Institute? You're not getting any grades for this.
Right.
Truthfully. How did it happen?
I don't really know.
Come on. When did you first hear of Naropa Institute?
I was walking along and I went into this. I'm from New York City and I'm
familiar with the place.
I wander around the streets and I find bookstores to be. When I get a little bit tired of the noise, I go into a bookstore. And so I was looking in this bookstore and I saw this sun shining on this little bluish paper, and it's.
That's right. That's right. Yes.
And it said Naropa Institute, and I opened. If I can continue,
please.
Okay, I opened it up, and I saw all these. I saw these different. I saw this beginning. There was something in the beginning. I think it's something that's similar in the Shambhalas of compassion, goodness, all these words which are so nice, and they give me, not that many people, there is something, maybe, I don't know, about ideas in a sense. The idea of goodness in a certain sense is something, there's something good about it, let's say.
That's right.
And so I saw all these different things, and it stimulated me, and I felt good, and I was really kind of enthused about the fact, because I've spent a good amount of time in educational institutions. I sound as if I was saying I'm in prison, spend time there. But it's...
We understand. We understand.
And...
we here understand what you're saying.
And I looked through it, and I looked through the courses, and then after I read the catalog, which really excited me, I mean, the catalog excited me very much. It gave me all these buzzes from all my the words, and just a general feeling. And so then I checked out the book, Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism, which seemed, I wanted to check out who's the top guy and what has he written. So I went in. This was maybe like a couple of days later. I was passing by another bookstore, and I went in and I saw the book, and I was trying to say...
Did you read it?
Yeah, I read it. I was trying
the whole thing?
Yeah, I read the whole book.
Okay, let's get
I started reading it in the bookstore, and I was saying, should I read this in the bookstore? Is it worth buying and taking it outside and reading it there? Because after a while in the bookstore, you get like a third through, and then you just put it down and leave it.
Yeah, you take a long time to get here. Hurry up.
Okay. All right, so anyway, I guess...
So you read Cutting Through. You saw the sun, the yellow sun,
Yeah.
on a blue sky.
The paper sun.
Yeah. And you read Cutting Through, and you came here.
Right. I guess in a certain sense, I would like to say that attracted by just this notion of goodness or sanity or whatever. And
That's right. That's exactly right. That's what we're trying to say at Naropa Institute. That's what we've been trying to say since the beginning.
But you see, okay, and
It takes discipline, my friend. We're so used to thinking in such a haphazard way that goodness may strike us on the spot, and it actually could awaken our heart on the spot. But then we think so much. And there's our whole life story, which may be very short, on the other hand, may be endless. So it takes discipline to actually come right down to that goodness, which is without ego. It takes to sit, to practice. I'm very glad you came here. It's very nice to hear you, meet you.
it's nice meeting you.
Well, anybody else? Okay.
The sending and taking, do you have to wait until you feel that until you are in the Mahayana? Can you do that at the beginning or somewhere on the narrow path also?
Well, I think it's possible to do that. Yes, definitely. Are you in a study group? No. Well,
It conflicts with the class.
I see. Do you have meditation instructor?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think they can teach you that. Like the Vajracharya said, 10 minutes, and then continue with your practice. I think you should check with the meditation instructor.
Okay.
When to do that and how to do it. But definitely everybody can do it. Definitely. There's no problem.
Thank you.
You see, if you say, when I'm in the Mahayana path, that's a very difficult thing to say. Because you're in it and the door closed behind you. So wait a minute. On the other hand, as sentient beings, what else can we do? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I guess we should end at this point. I would like to thank you very much for your attentiveness and actually for your bright quality and brilliance. I'm so pleased that this is the third session I have taught at Naropa Institute. The first session was when the Vajracharya was on retreat. I taught by myself 2 sessions, and the last 2 sessions, summer before and this one, together, both of us. And I feel that this particular session is the very best so far, that people actually do understand and practice. And we've had a great interchange. This is my last meeting with all of you of this session, and some of you may be going on and leaving Boulder, and some of you may be staying. I would like to express my gratitude to all of you for participating. It makes some sense to the rest of the world, including ourselves. I appreciate it for my own practice and for yours as well, that we could do this together. I would hope that you can continue the way you have been going, with effort and commitment to sanity That would be good for all of us. I would also hope that you could, in the best way you can, support this particular institution which provides such an opportunity for us to be together like this and to practice in the way we do. It's very rare, which doesn't mean it's extinct. It doesn't mean it's bound for the Smithsonian Institute particularly. It means that the rarity of it can produce an egg which hatches great enlightenment. The final stage of the Bodhisattva path is called the Vajra-like Samadhi, which is a continual awareness of compassion and a continual action of compassion for the benefit of others. We feel extremely proud that we can present this environment to sentient beings and to students from wherever they are, whatever background, whatever Buddhist, Christian, whatever you might call yourself, Jewish, Hindu, it doesn't matter, that there can be an environment where gentleness, peacefulness, inquisitiveness, and generosity and patience can be maintained and flourished. I would like to thank all of you who have contributed this session to our fundraising drive. And I thank you very much. And I would like to encourage all of you to do much more. And please help us continue our work together and our path together. This might sound somewhat sectarian. On the other hand, we have in mind the genuine good of all beings. So thank you very much. And if you're coming around next session, I'll see you again then. If not, it's been extremely good to have been with you and to know you.